Oh my gosh. On Sunday. Last Sunday. Like, wow, we can. Right next door. Wow. I'm just waiting for the family for a minute. Sorry. They're going to be coming this way, right through in front of us. So you can stay on this side. Just be careful because I think they're going to come right through there. So just step back a bit. Yeah. Esaenai el heharim me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz Hayiten lamod raglecha Ayanum shomrecha Hine lo yanum velo yishan Shomer Yisroel Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikora yishmor ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. על מקומה תבוא ושלום. הצור תמים פולו ככל רחב משפט, אל אמונה ואין עוול, צדיק וישר הוא. צדיק אתה אדוני להעמיד ולחיות, אשר בידך פיקדון כל רוחות, חלילה לך זיכרוננו למחות. ויהיו עיניך ברחמים עלינו פקוחות, כי לך אדון הרחמים, הרחמים והסליחות. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, דיין האמת. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו. God you give, God you take, blessed be the name of God. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, the judge of truth. וישוב העפר אל הארץ שהיה, והרוח תשוב אל האלוהים אשר נתנה. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God, Adonai, send comfort to those who mourn, and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. We began today's service with a psalm, a shir lama'alot, a song for those who ascend. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming, now and forever. May Ruth Matas go unto God in peace. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to our broadcast of this service in honor of Ruth Matas. Jewish people are used to, for thousands of years, joining together physically when we mark life cycle events, and especially when we grieve. It makes it all the more difficult to be isolated, to be apart. But we are thankful for technology, for our ability for you still to see us here at the Shared Zedek Cemetery as we gather to honor, to pay tribute to, and to celebrate the life of Ruth Matas. Ruth bat Shmuel Ufegel, the daughter of Fanny and Samuel Churchill, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory. And we are thankful that you can tune in and join us as we come here today to show Ruth the ultimate respect in Jewish tradition we have of accompanying her here to her final resting place. It's our opportunity, wherever we may be right now, to say goodbye. Ruth passed away yesterday, the 14th day in the Hebrew month of Kislev. She was 95. She will be lovingly missed by her daughters and son and their spouses, Susan and Robert, Carol and Per, John and Stephanie, by her 6 grandchildren and their spouses and partners, Michael and Savitri, Mark and Theo, Rebecca and Locke, Sam and Bonnie, Jesse and Addie, Eli and Jordan, as well by her 12 great-grandchildren, Zevi, Naomi, Judah, Ezra, Elijah, Mia, Alyssa, Ethan, Kay, Mira, Theodore, and Emmanuel. As well, she will be missed by a vast and loving group of nieces, nephews, and many close cousins. Ruth was predeceased by her parents, Fanny and Sam, by her brother Gordon, and by her beloved husband Roy, all of blessed memory. I must admit to you, I never had the pleasure of meeting Ruth Matas, but after having the opportunity to spend some time and speak yesterday with Susan, Carol, and John, I've been fortunate enough to hear so many wonderful stories about her that really paint the picture of a truly remarkable and incredible woman. Smart, clever, educated, and well-read. A woman, I'm told, with a feisty personality, an indomitable spirit, a fighter. Someone who in the last 5 years especially proved time and time again her strength and resilience as she rallied in the face of mounting health issues and concerns. A woman who admittedly had her fair share of worries, especially germs, who wore masks on airplanes years ago. How prophetic was she? And also used to worry about how cold it was. Of course, today, on the first day of December, we have unseasonably warm weather. But a woman who was also incredibly tolerant, encouraging, and supportive. She's someone who made an indelible mark on her family, really on everyone who knew her, a mark that will be cherished and remembered forever. My name is Rabbi Matthew Leibel, and I am honored to be able to share some of these stories with you today as a eulogy in Ruth's honor. Ruth was born in Winnipeg, January 8, 1925, the first child of her immigrant parents. 5 years later, her brother Gordon was born, and they grew up in the North End on Scotia Street. Notably, their dad, Sam, became the first Jewish dentist in Winnipeg. After high school and the University of Manitoba, Ruth met and married Roy Matas in 1946. Their 3 children were born over the next 7 years as Ruth and Roy began a family of their own in a home on Cordova Street. Ruth supporting Roy in his work as a lawyer and later a judge, while taking on and excelling in the roles of devoted wife and mother, and also the ultimate hostess. To say she and Roy enjoyed an active social life almost feels like an understatement. It was incredible. The parties, the friends, and their home was the center of it all, especially when they built and moved into their cherished house on Bower in the 1970s. That house was also the site of all the family get-togethers. For every Jewish holiday, for any noteworthy occasion, they were always hosted by Ruth. In this way, she truly was not just the consummate hostess, always focused and concerned about etiquette, proper behavior, social propriety, but also a matriarch, the true matriarch of not just her immediate family, but even her large extended family. I'm told she had a spot at the table, but she never actually sat down. She never actually ate. She was always flying back and forth between the table and the kitchen, making sure everyone else was taken care of, eating and enjoying. Everyone enjoyed the meal, everyone enjoyed being together, and that is what drove Ruth, bringing everyone together. She was the glue. Her love of having family together extended even beyond her home to the famous Sunday brunch, a weekly tradition she established, which became a family institution after Roy passed away. Even just a few years ago, I'm told, when someone had news or something worthy of a celebration, Ruth's go-to response was, "Let's go out for dinner." And it wasn't just limited to family or to her own friends, but to her kids, her children. They were always encouraged to bring their friends, just to make sure they had enough food to be a good host. As we'll talk about in a moment, this continued to the cottage as well. Bring your friends, share, let's be together. In fact, Ruth took this another step forward. She was always the mom driving everybody, her kids and all their friends in the neighborhood, wherever they had to go, to their activities, be it sports or dance or getting together. She was the neighborhood chauffeur. Together, she and Roy built a life, a love, a partnership on a number of shared interests. We could start the conversation with the ballet, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, which was more than a love, really a passion. Of course, they had great seats, always wanting to go, especially on opening night. Roy served for years on the board of directors, including a 3-year stint as president, and Ruth was involved in various committees, as well as a very memorable annual event she spearheaded where she hosted all the dancers at her house once a year and tried to feed them, as she would put it, enough food for the entire year. The ballet really became more than just a shared love of Ruth and Roy, but a family affair, especially with Susan and Carol. And Ruth continued to go in her famous seats without fail until only a few years ago. The ballet also provided an opportunity for Ruth to travel the world, with Roy as well. A special visit to China tops the list with the ballet, where Ruth famously, not sure of how the food in China would go over with her, brought her own chicken. Their shared love of the ballet was really only the tip of their love and their genuine support for the Winnipeg arts community. Theater, symphony, opera, visits to art galleries, collecting their own art, and then, of course, to go bigger, the Broadway shows. There were regular trips to New York to see the lights and the performances on Broadway. Susan, Carol, and John fondly remember a family trip to New York specifically so the children could be introduced to Broadway theater. And of course, John got to go to Madison Square Garden too. That love of travel that helped with the ballet continued. Many opportunities for conferences through Roy's work, but of course, there were winters in Palm Springs and frequent, almost every couple of years, visits to Israel. It didn't hurt that Roy was a member of the Canadian Technion Society and the International Board of Governors of the Israel Institute of Technology. Israel was another passion for Ruth and for Roy, sharing their trips to the Holy Land together. It was also one of the most obvious extensions and demonstrations of the pride they had in their Jewish identity, as well as commitment to other Jewish causes, naturally their Zionism and their involvement with Congregation Sheret Zedek. Then there were sports, another shared interest, but not just for Roy. Certainly, Ruth could hold her own. Season seats for the Blue Bombers, never missing one of John's hockey games, a love of baseball. On visits to Toronto to see Susan's family, Ruth would always make a point of catching her grandsons Michael and Mark's basketball games, even one time heading down to Cleveland to watch them compete in a tournament. I'm told they thought of her fondly as the perfect fan, certainly their most enthusiastic and their noisiest fan. Back home in Winnipeg, she would regularly watch her local grandkids in their sporting endeavors, specifically hockey and baseball. She even became a bit of an accidental legend for her antics in the crowd. In one memorable story, an umpire had to walk over to the stands and warn her, the grandmother, please to settle down, because she had been yelling at the ump all game about how unfair he'd been, calling strikes on one of her grandchildren. And then, of course, there was the cottage. While Roy was working and would head back and forth between the city and Falcon Lake and their special bay with a number of other houses on it, every weekend, Ruth grabbed the 3 kids and moved out there summer after summer. She was never afraid to get up at 6 a.m. if it called, to take one of her kids, Carol, to the horses for saddling and riding, and to continue what they used to do on Bauer, hosting the families nearby on the bay and their kids' friends. No one was ever turned away from one of the many parties and get-togethers on Falcon Lake. Sadly and tragically, 34 years ago, Roy passed away suddenly. And as another trademark of her strength and resilience, Ruth soldiered on, living in that house until she moved on to the Shaftesbury, the Portsmouth, and eventually the Simpkin Centre, where she spent the last 3 years happily embracing the atmosphere, the people, and the culture there. But her love of Roy cannot go unmentioned. True devotion, a love that was intense. For her, he was her everything, and he loved her. Whether it was sports, performing arts, or of course politics, their shared love of politics, specifically the Liberal Party of Manitoba, or travel, or family, they built together a tremendous partnership that she continued long after he passed. It continues to her grandkids and her great-grandkids. We mentioned 6 grandkids, their partners as well, 12 great-grandkids. They called her Baba. And eventually, when she became a great-grandmother, she was given the well-suited moniker of Super Baba. I asked, what was she like as a Baba? We got a bit of a picture with some of the stories for sports, but we can go even further. She was indulgent, spoiling her grandkids rotten, always lending a sympathetic ear when maybe the kids' parents didn't quite get where they were coming from. In a speech a few years back, I'm told a couple of her grandchildren remarked that they realized quickly she had absolutely no expectations of them and yet would always love them deeply and unconditionally. Of course, she did have a couple of expectations: always to dress warm and always to be on the lookout for germs. Always washing your hands. As a result, it was a relationship where they adored her and she adored them. It's also in the little things. Some of the things that may seem not as significant, but they were. They help paint the picture of a remarkable woman. Ruth's love of really strong black coffee that no one else could make well enough, and freshly squeezed orange juice every day. Her love of baking. While she may not have made any headlines as a cook, she certainly did as a fabulous baker. Her pies in particular, lemon, peach, apple, were known around the neighborhood, were cherished and treasured, and part of her role as the consummate hostess. And also politics, the news, being knowledgeable, well-read, watching Question Period every day, and never shying away from a conversation or even a great debate with other family members at get-togethers. As we mentioned, the last 3 years, Ruth lived at the Simpkin Center, and the family wanted me to extend sincere appreciation and thanks to all of the staff who did so much to help them and to help her as a resident. In Jewish tradition, we have a concept mentioned in the Bible in the book of Proverbs of an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, a woman who represents virtues of courage and strength. I suggest today that Ruth Matas is the embodiment of the Eshet Chayil in the way she lived her life, the way she carried herself throughout her life, and the way she was and still will be remembered for her family and for her entire community. It says in Proverbs, an Eshet Chayil, a good wife, a mother of generations, a woman of valor, who can find? Her worth is far above rubies. She is precious in the gifts she's given to her family. Her children have found trust and truth in these gifts. They follow in patterns she taught. She is robed in strength and dignity, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. We benefit and learn from her wisdom. May she be credited for the fruit of her labor and for her achievements. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. May she live on in glory. On behalf of Ruth Matas, I will now chant the El Malei Rachamim prayer, the traditional memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Meromim, Hamotzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Uteorim Kezohar Arakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Ruth Bat Shmuel Ufegel Shehalcha Leolama Began Dente Menuchata Anabal Harachamim Hastirea Beseter Knafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror Achaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachlata V'tanuach V'shalom Al Mishkava V'nomar exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Ruth Matas, Ruth bat Shmuel Ufagel, the daughter of Samuel and Fanny of blessed memory, who has gone on to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that she find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. If I may offer one more reading which serves as another prayer. Eternal God, Master of mercy, give us the gift of remembering. May our memories of Ruth be tender and true, undiminished by time. Let us recall her and love her as she was. Shelter us with the gift of tears. Let us express our sense of loss, our sorrow, our pain, as well as our love, in even words unspoken. Bless us, God, with the gift of prayer, that we may face you with an open heart, with trusting faith, unembarrassed and unashamed. Strengthen us with the gift of hope. May we always believe in the beauty of life, in the power of goodness, and in our right to joy. We surrender our being and the soul of our beloved to your all-knowing compassion. In these difficult times, we don't have the ability to observe Shiva in the traditional way, gathering together for several days to share stories, to comfort and console those who are now in mourning, Ruth's family, her loved ones. While we may be apart, and while we may need to embrace grieving and isolation, we encourage all of you watching, whether you have done so already or not, to reach out to Ruth's loved ones with emails, phone calls, text messages, expressions. The same sort of memories you would share at a formal Shiva can still be shared and can still help console and comfort a family in mourning, a family in grief. So please continue to reach out just as you've joined in our service today. In a moment, we will end the broadcast. We will conclude here at the cemetery site with the burial. We can't do it in the same way as a community, but we still believe in Jewish tradition that to shovel earth into the grave is a mitzvah, a righteous act, a selfless act we do without hope of any reward, an act that may be painful, but one born of love and compassion for someone so special who meant so much to so many people, to demonstrate, to follow through in our belief, on our respect of caring for our loved ones until the very end. Before we get to that, though, we will recite the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Earlier today in the service, we said in Hebrew, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. These are the words of Job, the epitome in Jewish tradition of suffering. Job said, God, you have given, God, you have taken, blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Ruth Matas be a blessing, as we mark that her essence will never leave our hearts and our souls. To the family we say, in Hebrew, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled. May God comfort and console you among all those who have been or who are in mourning. And now we turn to the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yithalal, shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, to all of humanity, as again we say, Amen. Thank you again to everyone who is watching our broadcast, and also sincere thanks to our volunteer pallbearers.